episode 130, the Super Featherweight podcast, if you like. Not a lot going on. One of the hot stories was that, the British Board have suspended boxing for January. So there's not really a lot going on in the world of British boxing. So what we thought we would do the second annual State of the Union, or State of the Boxing World podcast. And today I'm joined by pretty much a veteran now in Paul Zanon. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Cal. Thank you as always for having me on.
And also joined by Luca Rossi. How are you, bud? Welcome back.
Thanks, Cal. I know I've been pestering you to get back on, so appreciate it. Happy New Year. Yes,
Happy New Year to you. Do you know what? It's a weird thing. I'm really uncomfortable saying Happy New Year to people. I don't know why. It's a tick. It's a problem. I just don't. People say it to me. You go back to the office. I think it's because Christmas has been and gone, and it's a new year. And people are like, "Oh, Happy New Year," and you just think, "Oh, fuck off." You're back in the office. It's like, "Oh, fuck off." It's not Happy New Year. I want to be back at Christmas. I want to be back at home drinking and playing the PlayStation, not talking to you. But that's just me. But yes, Happy New Year to both of you. So yeah, it's a new year. I thought we'd do the State of the Union. We did this last year. We spoke a lot. We spoke about kind of the state of British boxing, the state of world boxing. We're going to talk about all sorts of different topics. And then we'll jump in with some news bits and pieces as well. And I think we'll start off with some news stuff because we were just talking about it off air. But I thought as we were just about to start talking about it, let's talk about it now. And it was the news that came out yesterday that Terence Crawford is suing former promoter Bob Arum. For it's the stuff that's grabbed the headlines has been the racism stuff, but it feels for me that this isn't. Yes, that is very important, but I think the crux of the lawsuit, Luca, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Terence feels like he's been fucked over with money. Do you think that's fair to say?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know the sort of, the details of it, but clearly it's got a little bit shades of Mikey Garcia, hasn't it? Obviously, Mikey was out for a long, long time, wasn't he, when he had, I don't know if it was exactly similar to Crawford. So let's just hope that clearly doesn't happen first and foremost. But perhaps you guys can fill me in a little bit more because I really don't know the details, to be perfectly honest. But I have read about, obviously it's financial. We know that's always the case. But I don't really know what's underneath it. Very sort of out of character maybe for Crawford as well, who's kind of always, in the sidelines a little bit and very uncontroversial. So certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, it is. It is quite interesting. There's a lot to dig into it really. Like I said before, the headline grabbing stuff was around, there was some racism allegations and things like that. But also the thing is around Crawford seeking about $10 million in damages from Top Rank over not being paid what he feels he should be paid. And it's interesting, Paul, isn't it? Because Bob Arum in the past was quite open that he basically said that Terence Crawford wasn't a money draw and that they were making a loss on his fights. How do you feel about this whole thing? How do you feel about this whole thing around Crawford? And he's obviously clearly a really good fighter, but there seems to have been this kind of murmuring under the surface with him and his value next to the reality. How do you feel about that, Paul?
I mean, just drawing parallels, as Luca said about Mikey Garcia, certainly it sounds more like a money grab. It sounds like a frustration. Mikey Garcia went to ground for over 3 years. It was purely out of frustration, and he had to kind of ride that out so he could sort of end contracts and whatever else. I don't know Bob Arum. I've never been out on the lash with him or anything, so I don't really know him that well. But I would say that due to the history he's got in boxing, I mean, he's about 6,000 years old. He's probably one of the few people that actually used to know Luis Ortiz in his younger days. And I would say that he's not a racist. Let's hope that's the case as well. I think George Foreman today actually put out a note on Twitter saying, he's got my support and he's not a racist and whatever else. But what I do feel very sorry for with Terence Crawford is that he's, basically you're looking at Canelo and Terence Crawford as the pound for pound best fighters on the planet. You've got Tyson Fury, who's probably somewhere between sort of 5 to 10 in terms of best fighters on the planet, pound for pound, and he's there getting $100 million 3-fight deal. Why? Because he's the 6'9". He's the biggest braggadocio on the planet. He brings a lot of heat with him. He brings a lot of steam, and unfortunately, Tell doesn't bring. That's what I call him, Tell. When me and Terence are out on the beers, So Tell just doesn't bring the heat. He's not the sort of person that goes to press conferences and calling people your big dosser and whatever else. What he does best is in the ring itself. And I think I've said this before, if you were to get someone like Rocky Marciano these days, he wouldn't be earning a lot of money. He'd probably be on 6 figures all the way, and he could be winning all the titles and doing whatever, because he was never a huge personality. And these days, it's literally the old thing about this is show business. It's definitely not show friends, it's show business. And you've got to be getting up on stage and giving some of that theatre, showing some of those theatricals at the press conferences, in the ring and everywhere around. And Terence doesn't do that. He's quite a sort of a quiet character off screen, very polite, an absolute pleasure to watch when he boxes, can't get enough of him. And he wants that Errol Spence Jr. fight. He wants it for the freaking big cash as well. And you know what? He's earned the right for that. So I don't know if he's got a bad advisory committee that have said to him, let's take the racial route on this. And I sincerely hope that, like I said, that Bob Arum hasn't made any racial slurs. If he has, then he has to take the full brunt and all the consequences that come with it. But I think it's a bit of a quick money grab. He's thinking, I can get $10 million going through the courts here with this, maybe even get out of court settlement just to shut Bob up, and then still fight on and carry on my maybe 6 and a bit figure purses. I think if he's looking to get a $3, $4, $5 million payout, then he needs to start speaking a bit more. And unfortunately, it's a bit late in the game for that. He does what he does best, like I said, in the ring. He's not a braggadocio.
So I'm just actually, while you were speaking, I was listening to you there, and you're right about Crawford. He's not a massive, he's not someone that's like a huge character within the sport now. But I was just looking at the lawsuit while you were speaking there, and so what I've just read is that he had the Mean Machine fight. I'm not going to try and say the guy's name, but his nickname was Mean Machine. He had that fight. It was in 2019, and then in his contract, he was supposed to have a second fight that year, but didn't. And so that's where he's claiming $4.5 million for. Then he's claiming $900,000 for a bonus that was part of that fight as well. Or they called it like a Spence bonus, because that was supposed to be, if he didn't get the Spence fight, he gets $900,000. And he didn't get the Spence fight because Spence had the car crash. So that's $5.5 million of it, and I guess the rest is the other bits and bobs in there. I'm not a lawyer, but I just had a quick read about what it's all about. But yeah, you're right, Paul. He's not a massive character. But I think the thing with Crawford is he's not. I read some quotes attributed to him earlier on, and in 2020 it was, he said, if I'm going to fight Spence, I have to get 60-40 of the split, which is fucking crazy, because Spence is a much bigger money draw than him, much bigger. Pay-per-view wise, TV audience wise, he's a bigger draw. And if anyone would get, I don't like purse splits. I think just be happy with what you get. Like, don't worry about what the other guy gets, but if anyone's getting more of the money, it's not going to be Terence Crawford. It's going to be Errol Spence. And I think if the fight was to happen next year, there's a chance Spence goes into that with 3 of the 4 titles, as well as being the money draw. Crawford does well to get 30% in that world, to be honest with you.
I think he needs to be aiming at a figure instead of a percentage. So, for example, if he just sort of says, listen, I want to walk away with this clear, after all the crap, the trainers, the tax, etc., I want to walk away with $1.5 million absolutely clear, which is probably equivalent to about $4 million gross as a purse. And if he's able to do that, then to hell with whatever the other person gets. Yeah, if he finds out the other person's got 15 million, then it's going to be, maybe a bit of sort of a bitterness going on there. But if you said, I think I'm worth this amount for the fight, pay me it, then that's it. And forget about what the other person's sort of getting. There's always going to be a bigger purse. There's always going to be a bigger payday. There's always something around the corner. The grass sometimes isn't, unfortunately, greener on the other side when everyone turns their nose up at you and says, you know what, actually, we don't want to deal with you now. So it's one of those things as well, which must be extremely frustrating. The man's unbeaten. And you look at his CV, and the different weight classes he competed in. He's beaten everyone that they put in front of him. And I mean, the fight against Sean Porter was, Sean Porter gave Errol Spence Jr. a hell of a time, and this was pre-crash. And you got to think to yourself, Terence Crawford made it look like at certain points against Porter easy work, and that's it. So to actually say he was the man that retired Sean Porter is going some. Obviously. There's a load of other fighters that he's beaten there, which are a little bit over the hill, like Kell Brook and Amir Khan. Don't get me started on either of those. And their 149.5 pound catch weight that they're having. I think you could move the decimal point at the moment. Kell Brook would probably just about make it. But in terms of Terence Crawford at the moment, if I could sort of wave a magic wand and make something happen for him, I'd like him to have a big purse, get out of all the legal shit, concentrate on the boxing, bring the very best version of Bud to the table, whoever he fights next. And let's hope in the next 3 fights, it's Errol Spence Jr. before Bud Crawford simply gets too old.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it? Is his age. Do you think, Luca, this whole business now with Bob Arum and all the lawsuit, do we think that's a threat to the Errol Spence fight this year?
Yeah, I mean, it could get really messy. By the way, EK, I think you were referring to Egidius Kavaliauskas, if I'm not mistaken, the Lithuanian fighter.
Thank you.
I mean, I've got a few points on that, actually. First of all, without going into the legalities of it, why is Terence Crawford piped up now? It seems like, as Paul said, quite late in the day. He's not getting any younger, probably getting into the twilight of his career. So why suddenly now? I mean, the other thing as well, promotion works both ways. So, obviously you need a manager, a promoter, but you've also got to be part of the process and promote yourself. I mean, I think of, say, the work that Rick Mirigian has done with Jose Ramirez, for example, who obviously lost to Josh Taylor, and his presence in California and all the work that he does to get his name out there as well, and everything else. So again, it's obviously a two-way thing. So it's a funny one. But back to your question, yes, I mean, who knows what can happen? It could get very messy indeed, couldn't it? Let's hope it doesn't. But again, it's very strange. I think the timing of it is strange for me.
It is quite strange. Look at Luca with the notes, Paul, mugging us off. See that? He had notes.
Yeah, yeah. It's like me being back at school, I never used to have notes. That's why I failed everything.
Yeah, mugging, I'm getting proper Football Factory, like, kind of flashbacks, like, you mugging me off in front of my pals.
The other thing about paydays as well, it reminds me a bit about Premiership footballers. I think Rudiger at Chelsea at the moment is a case in point. They find out, their mates are getting double what they're getting, and then suddenly, hey ho, they threaten to leave until they get the same or more. So it's a little bit like that. I think clearly, it's difficult to say that, that kind of it's probably, somewhere in the middle, but still, for Crawford, it would be better if he could just focus on his career and hopefully, those paydays will come with the big fights, really. So it's a bit of a shame, I think.
Yeah, it's not like they've not, the top, say what you like about Bob Arum, but he's a fucking good promoter. He is still at 90 years old, a brilliant promoter and top rank. And I think if I had a son or daughter and they were turning pro, I'd want them to be with Top Rank, because they know how to bring a fighter through, how to get him paid well, and how to get him to a world championship fight quickly. You look at Michael Conlan right now; he's on the brink of a world title fight. I don't think he's a world class fighter. I'm not convinced he'll beat Lee Wood, but they've matched him really well. He's been paid really well. He's fighting in front of massive audiences, and they have the ESPN machine over there in America. And ESPN, they live in their own little bubble, and only ESPN fighters count. And so they make their fighters look and presented like $1 million. But the thing is with Terence Crawford, and I saw someone make this point on Twitter earlier on, was Terence Crawford kept signing extensions with Top Rank. His contract's been up about 3 times in the last 3 or 4 years, and he kept signing extensions with them. Why didn't you leave? And I always find it frustrating when top fighters like that will stay with an established promoter, but it actually makes Bob Arum's point that Crawford's just not a draw. He wasn't in a place like a Canelo, like a Mayweather, that could go out on their own and just be their own guy and be their own promoter. He's just not that business minded like a Floyd or a Canelo, but also just isn't the draw, just doesn't attract the money, be it via pay-per-view. I think one of his pay-per-views did 50,000. The other one did 90,000, whereas like Spence is doing 2 and 3 and 400,000 buys, So on, Luca.
No, so I was going to say, but shouldn't part of that blame be at the door of the promoter as well? Perhaps why haven't they made more of Crawford? Why haven't they been able to promote him? Because the guys, Crawford, he's a very likable guy. He's got a great backstory. So why haven't they maybe made more of it? So, I think it takes two to tango here, clearly, legal stuff aside and, promises and contracts, because like you said, we're not lawyers here, but it's an odd one because like you said, if you are with Top Rank, you'd expect that you will get the big fights, and with the big fights come the big money. So the question is, why hasn't Crawford been in big fights?
Yeah, I suppose maybe some of it will come out in the wash over this lawsuit. Let's do some more of the new stuff. We'll kind of turn the running order around a bit. So Paul, what the last thing I saw about this, Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte, it was going to purse bids, and the purse split announced by the WBC was 80-20 to Tyson Fury. God, they're really trying to stick it to Dillian, aren't they? Do you think this fight gets made next, Fury and Whyte?
I mean, well, at the moment, if you leave it with Fury, he's making it out to be, the rumble in the jungle. He's making it out to be something huge. It's going to be in the UK and it will sell out any single venue. I don't think it will. I mean, listen, when's the last time big deals fought? And is there a genuine hunger to want to get out there? If I was a heavyweight boxer, which I'm obviously not, but I'd want to be keeping myself sharpish, even if I'm just sort of like fighting people at domestic level to say, hey, I'll do a few knockouts, 2-3 rounders, whoever it may be. But it's been a while since he's been out, and Fury's been active, and he's been active at top level. So if Dillian Whyte goes in there, it's almost looking like it's a foregone conclusion at the moment. I mean, they will say, the last thing that goes with a heavyweight boxer is his punch. That's true. But unless you've got the timing in there, you're never going to cock that punch at the right time and land it. And that big left hook that he's hoping will floor Tyson Fury, I think it's going to be a little bit on the rusty side. And Tyson Fury will go to work on him straight away. So am I looking forward to it? There's a lot more fights on the horizon that I'd be looking forward to more. Let's put it that way.
What do you think, Luke? Do you think it happens?
I don't know. It's kind of been ongoing, hasn't it, with Big Dill? And we love Big Dill, by the way. He's a great character. And I think, with the WBC, he's been in, it's been an ongoing issue, hasn't it, for a good few years for him to get this shot, I suppose. So maybe it will happen. But, like Paul said, I think, Fury seems to be in shape. He's still serious about his boxing. But at the same time, these are sort of banana skins, aren't they? And for Fury, you take it a little bit lightly. You think you're just going to walk over someone like Dillian Whyte, and then hey ho, you get the Sunday punch, and it's good night Vienna. So you've got to be careful. All these fights come with a risk as well. So I think you've got to bear that in mind as well. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion by any stretch.
Yeah, I think it would do pretty well. Money-wise, I think it would do good. I think Dylan's got a fan base. Dylan has been a pay-per-view fighter for his last 3, 4, 5 fights now. I think and I think people really buy into the whole WBC #1 for 1,000 days, and people really buy into that. I don't so much really, because he's had opportunities. He could have fought Joshua a second time for 3 of the world titles. He could have fought Louis Ortiz in a final eliminator. Didn't want to. He got knocked out 2 fights ago. We can't really you can't really say too much about being mandatory because he got knocked out 2 fights ago. But I think it does do well. Money wise, I do think Fury gets him out of there in the first half of the fight. I think Dylan's ready to go, to be honest. I think he looked. I know he beat Povetkin second time, but he just didn't. Povetkin looked like he should have been on a ventilator, but Dylan.
Yeah, he was about 3 weeks in from having been diagnosed with COVID, and he'd had a really rough ride during the first week or so. And he went in there, he looked like he was being held up. I mean, it was that was not the fighter from the first fight. And I'll be honest, if Povetkin went in there fighting fit, I think he would have probably repeated the what happened in the first fight. Yeah, Dillian was winning the first 4 odd rounds, whatever. But Povetkin's a wily old fighter. He waits, he conserves his energy, and then bang, he unleashes, and he can stand there all night and take punches. I mean, it's Dillian Whyte doesn't have the punch power of someone like Anthony Joshua. We're talking like straight punching. It's got to be hooks, and if you start trying to hook with a hooker, which is what Povetkin is, you're in deep shit.
Yeah, no, I think White would lose against Fury. I think he's ready to go. I think next time he gets him with a top fighter, Dillian Whyte loses. And I actually, I want to do one of my big predictions towards the end of the pod, so I'll leave it at that. Really, I think I'm not. Yeah, but do we think it actually happens, Luca? Sorry, I don't know if you answered.
I'm not sure. I really don't know what to say. I mean, who knows? But back to your point as well, I think it would sell because it's a domestic dust-up at the end of the day, and it'll be here in England, no doubt, and there'll be a big crowd. And Dillian's quite savvy as well when it comes to promoting. So yeah, I think it will do well, sort of box office wise. Because boxing is in England, it's in the UK. This is where the money is, so no question about that. Whether it happens, I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't think, because obviously Fury's been fighting in America, but he's been fighting an American fighter mostly in Deontay Wilder, and so he's done big money over there. But I don't think 2 Brits in Vegas is gonna. It would do fine because Fury's doing okay over there, but I think it makes sense for it to be over here. 2 Brits in a football stadium, smallish football stadium maybe. I think it would do fine. Maybe Tottenham. You never know. But yeah, we'll see. What else have we got here? We were talking about this, Paul, last time out, and it was Joe Smith Jr. and Callum Johnson, and we were really looking forward to the fight, and it's fell out. Bed, Paul, isn't it?
Sorry, Cal, you froze there for about 10 seconds.
Did I? Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I was just saying that last time out we were talking about Callum Johnson and Joe Smith Jr. and the fight seems to have fell out of bed now. This
damn pandemic is doing a number on everyone, isn't it? There's been a few fights announced this week as well. I see Anthony Yard's been posting loads of clips of him, smashing tyres and doing what Anthony Yard does, looking good at the moment, and he's also said that he beats any light heavyweight in this country. It's quite a bold claim if we look at the crop we currently have in there, as we've gone on many times before. We have the perfect Super 6 tournament domestically waiting to go. I'd love for a promoter, a boxer or whoever, to basically say, listen, England's doing its own Super 6 based on its own light heavyweight crop at the moment, and it's going to get going in 2-3 months, whatever, and that's it. And then these guys can literally go in their gladiator style and go hand to hand. It's a shame. Would I like the fight to go ahead? Yes. Who would I like as a replacement? I would like to see Anthony Yard jump in there. I would like to see him. But yeah, in the meantime, let's see what happens. We've still got this hiatus with Britain. I mean, it must mean that British fighters can go and fight abroad. So it's not difficult if they want to organise a fight. The States is waiting there. Yeah, it makes you wonder with the British Boxing Board of Control. Maybe if they're looking at what's going on in the UK now, they could perhaps reassess it. I don't know. Cases are still high. Let's see. I mean, if they want to get around it, they can just say that the boxing matches are just business meetings,
Yeah. Do you think, Luca, we get to a point where it was when was that? A year ago, when we were having fights behind closed doors in Eddie Hearn's back garden or at empty Wembley Arena? Do we think we get to that point again? Do you think we're going to get there again, or do you think we're just going to muddle along to the summer?
No, I think hopefully, the worst of it is behind us, but clearly, restrictions and regulations are what they are, as you said at the top of the show about the British Boxing Board of Control and January shows. So I mean, you never know, but hopefully, let's hope, for God's sake, that from next month here in Britain and whatever, the fights keep rolling, and hopefully you can get back to normal with the crowds. I sincerely hope so. I think it's been long enough now, I think.
Yeah. I don't want to get too much into COVID, really. It's everybody has their own little opinions about it all, but it's very draining, isn't it? But yeah, I'd love to see. I was really looking forward to Callum Johnson and Joe Smith Jr. Joe Smith Jr.'s got himself a substitute opponent, which I imagine he'll take care of pretty quickly. And then I'd still like to see Callum Johnson get his shot. I know he's not a mandatory contender, but I still would like to see him get his shot because I think that's a really good fight. And then the winner gets Anthony Yard, and then there's that British kind of mix in there with Joe Smith Jr. While maybe at the same time Bivol fights Beterbiev, and we kind of eventually get everybody unified again. But I quite like that if we have a couple of Brits, in a row go up against Joe Smith. But I wouldn't rule out Callum Johnson against Joe Smith. If he gets over COVID okay, which I'm sure he will, I think he gives Joe Smith Jr. a hell of a fight. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully that gets rescheduled, and I get to look forward to that. This was yours, Luca. You mentioned to me, and I forgot all about it. So I'm really grateful to you to pointing this out to me. It was about Cash Farouk and him sadly having to retire at such a young age. Hell of a talent, right, Luca?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I was really shocked when I saw that. I actually asked Paul, and I said, "Do you know why?" And I guess, well, obviously, usually the case that obviously, brain scans and stuff like that, which is obviously the very sad aspect of boxing, and an extremely promising career curtailed and cut short, and also seemingly a top guy as well. And hopefully, he'll be able to deal with it with his family and the support. I think is at St Andrews Boxing Club, and they seem to be a very tight bunch there, and united. And obviously, wish Cash all the best. Yes, when I saw him, he really, really looked very, very promising indeed, and heading towards a world title and potentially, the world championship. So yeah, very, very sad at such a young age. Yeah.
Really sad, because he looked like he was going the WBC route, and then you had his only loss against Lee McGregor, who seemed very close to getting a world title fight, and he just thought both of them were going to win one, and then we're going to see them have the rematch, because that was super close, that first fight. Thoughts on Cash Farouk and him having to retire, Paul?
Yeah, really sad. Great talent, and you're right. I mean, it was basically sort of meandering back to sort of the two locking horns again. It was almost like sort of James DeGale against George Groves. Very, very close fight. There was belts on the line, admittedly minus all the stick, because Lee McGregor and Cash basically, there was a lovely comment from Lee McGregor, one of the first to get onto Twitter, and basically put a comment out to say that he was absolutely gutted to hear that. He knew that the rematch was going to be a barn burner, and that he hopes he still remains in the sport. He's got a lot to offer, etc. But at the time, one put the sort of British title on the line, the other one put the Commonwealth. Very, very close split decision. McGregor goes on to win the proper European, the EBU bantamweight title, and so there was a lot at stake, and they helped to raise each other's stock without a doubt with the performance. Both very, very good bantamweights, would have done well at world level. They were going the right route, the whole sort of British, Commonwealth, European track. Very, very sad indeed. It's one of those things as well. You've got to think to yourself, boxing is at the moment predominantly about the business side more than anything, which is quite sad. So will Cash want to just sort of hang around his local club and try and make a sort of money through that? Probably not. Will he? Has he got the finances to be able to open up his own club and pass on his knowledge? You'd like to think he might have earned a few quid to do that, but I'm not sure what other career he's going to sort of fall back on. He's very young and by no means had reached his full potential. That was a few years down the line. So I hope the boxing community really takes care of him. I hope they start opening as many doors in front of him, and he starts walking through absolutely all of them, because he deserves good things from here on.
Yeah, definitely. We need to look after fighters that have to retire so young, and maybe he does something. He's a young man. Maybe he can go and do something completely different. Hopefully he's got a few quid and he can invest in his own future and do something completely different. But the memories of that fight between them two, I'd never, to be honest, I'd never seen either one of them fight, and it was on BBC Scotland. And when's boxing ever on BBC ever? And someone, I can't remember, I think it might have been Sean Brown, put it on Twitter, this is on BBC Scotland tonight. And I was like, and it started doing the rounds on Twitter, and so I watched it, and what a fight that was, wasn't it, Luca? It was a really good domestic stop.
Yeah, and I saw Cash on another BBC Scotland. I think it might have been John Angus MacDonald put out a tweet a bit like Sean Brown, like you said, and I remember seeing him before that and thinking this guy's he was a like pressure fighter, exciting kind of talent, and I think it's going to be hard psychologically for him, obviously, but again, it has to be said without going into the dangers of boxing, but we have to mention that is boxing is still a very dangerous. We don't want to get into the controversy of that, but it is a reminder, unfortunately, and I can't actually remember the last case like Cash, somebody of that that age having to retire so young. So it just does remind us of, unfortunately, of that boxing is a very brutal sport, and these things can happen, sadly.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the British board later on, and everybody knows how I feel about the board, but it was in a board medical where this was picked up, and it shows that those medicals have an importance, and so fair play to the board for picking that up, and then to the doctor to advising him to retire. Really, it's a shame, but it's good for him. And the last little news bit, really, Paul, is about. I thought I'd ask you this one. It's just kind of about Ryan Garcia and just generally what's kind of going on with him. He obviously beat Luke Campbell. That popped up on my time hop the other day. Fun fight. Gets dropped in the second round. Gets up and stops Luke Campbell with a body shot. Brilliant. He's going to go. Luke Campbell. That's such a good win. Puts him right up there in terms of getting a world title fight. And then it seems he's had a mental health crisis. Then he's had a hand injury. It was looking at fighting Isaac Cruz, and now it looks like he's going to drop 3 or 4 levels below Isaac Cruz now. Just thoughts in general on Ryan Garcia, and what do you think 2022 holds for him?
I don't know. He was being touted as the next Oscar De La Hoya. With the age, the hand speed, that aggression. Luke Campbell was certainly massive kudos to him. Luke was sort of far from washed up, and good fighter. And he actually, like you say, come off the canvas and then stopped him. And Campbell said he'd never been hit by such a body shot before. And then there was all sorts of things, all sorts of bullshit from the social media saying, he's in a division where he would just get absolutely smashed and this, that, and the other, which admittedly at the moment, I think we might have said on the last poddy, the 135 division is probably the tastiest on the planet at the moment, between the likes of Gervonta Davis and et cetera. But his mental health issues, wherever they may have stemmed from, whether it be he felt like the world was sort of like caving in on him and he was getting, the anxiety of that sort of forced him into a place where he needed to sort of take some time out, then brilliant. At least maybe he's able to centre himself, and now he's come out sort of more refreshed again. I think it just kind of leaves a question mark over him, though, in terms of mentally and physically, where is he at right now? And that's why this fight was supposed to be between someone who was half decent to show, yes, I've still got it. Yes, I'm young. And hell yeah, I'm still going to be able to compete at 135 with whoever the hell's out there. But unfortunately, there's at 135. There's there's a really big selection of people he could have chosen at the moment, and I think again, this is just going to be a glorified sparring session. It should be quick work.
Yeah, what I saw earlier on, Dan Rafael reported that he's going to fight Masitio Gesta or Saul Rodriguez. Don't know either of those. So he's not really looking at Isaac Cruz, and it's a bit of a jump down from Isaac Cruz, and it's a shame because I understand it. He's had a long time out, Garcia, but if he was to get in with Isaac Cruz and get Cruz out of there, which Tank couldn't do, imagine the message that sends to the whole division.
Cruz, he was rocking Davis at one point in that fight, and I don't think he won it. There was all the uproar afterwards, that he won it, and this, that, and the other. I don't think he did, but he showed one thing. He kind of did like what Marcus Maidana did against Floyd Mayweather in the first fight, and he showed that he was able to break through the force field. It's not a case of he showed the blueprint, but he just showed he's not invincible. And like you said, if Ryan Garcia is able to go in there and do something a little bit special, spice it up that a little bit more, show that maybe his height and his reach advantage and can do something which Gervonta Davis physically cannot do, then it starts getting the whole melting pot of competitiveness back up and running again. So but let's see. Listen, it's great to see that he's going to come back out again and he's going to get back on the scene. Really hope that it's going to be somewhere near the version we knew before, and I really hope that he's able to reach his full potential. Seems like a nice lad, and it takes some big cojones for him to actually admit to the public that he needed to take time out due to mental health issues. So hats off to him.
100% agree with you. 100%.
Yeah.
We said as much at the time. It's especially in a sport like boxing, and there was a lot of people out there that weren't very sympathetic to him, which I think is fucking stupid. But that's another thing. I can see Tank fighting Isaac Cruz next. I think a rematch might happen. Anything else on Ryan Garcia? Luke, I saw you scribbling there furiously.
No. I think Paul summed it up really well at the end. He deserves a lot of credit for being so open about it. It is okay to not be okay. Excuse the cliche, but more of that. If you need time out, you take time out. Whatever reasons, you got to respect that. Obviously, went through a terrible time, and hopefully he's over that now and ready to go. Clearly, I get the sense with Garcia that they're kind of sort of molding him as kind of the next De La Hoya, really, or they'd like to believe. I personally don't think he's anywhere near as talented as Oscar, and time will tell how far he's going to go, but clearly he's got that golden boy sort of look about him, and I think clearly he will make a lot of money for promoters and hopefully for himself. So I think that's what they would like to hope will happen, but we shall see. I personally don't think he's at that level, but anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. He's a fun fighter. I think what we saw in the Campbell fight is that he's fallible, that he can be hurt, that he can be dropped, but that's only going to make his stock rise because people are going to watch him knowing that he could lose. So I don't think that was a bad thing for him at all. But there was some. Who I saw someone say, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said that might have been Bernard Hopkins said maybe getting dropped by Campbell made him think, oh, is this for me? Is this game for me? I'm not sure that's true. I imagine that guy's got a lot of pressure on him. And I remember Luke Williams a few podcasts back told us about the number of social media followers he has. He's one of the highest athletes in the world for social media interactions and being Googled. So, and this is a guy that's never won a world title. So he's clearly a big star, clearly has a lot of pressure on him. And hopefully he comes back and has loads more fun fights. We'll see. I thought now what we'll do is we'll move into the, kind of the State of the Union section of it. I've taken that from it's an American thing, isn't it? They have the State of the Union address. People that know me know I'm a big West Wing fan, and when we did it last year, the State of the Union, I couldn't think of what to call it because I think the Ring Magazine called it the State of the Game or something like that. Or something like that. But I just, the West Wing fan in me was just like, it's the State of the Union. We'll just call it that, whatever. So I thought we'd talk about boxing as a whole, boxing strength right now, and how strong we think it is, or where we think perhaps it's failing, and all of that. So, Paul, start us off, just in terms in general, how happy, how do you feel about boxing now and boxing's future?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of springboard off some recent news just to sort of to run on a parallel with that, which was the news yesterday that DAZN taken over BT Sport for $800 million or 580 million pounds in English money.
Real money.
In real money.
Real money, mate.
Proper, back in paying notes, So
shit.
I think that's an interesting move. It really is, because obviously DAZN are becoming like the power force in there. They came out of nowhere a few years ago, and before then it was kind of like Sky Sports collaborating with Matchroom and Box Nation with Frank Warren Promotions. That was that. Apart from that, you'd have to cross the big pond, and that was it. Now we're getting globalized promotional outfits, and DAZN is obviously seems to be the most powerful. There's sort of billionaires floating in the background there, keeping it afloat, and it will be around, I think, for a while. The fact that they're looking to take over BT Sport is very interesting because obviously they get, with the football, at the moment, from my understanding, that there is something like about, I don't know, 5 million subscribers that basically subscribe to BT Sport, and they're, getting all their football in there, which is fantastic. And DAZN have about 11 million subscribers worldwide. By doing this, they're going to naturally get into the slipstream of that 5 million from the UK, and they get a name better known as well. If they can keep the prices low, then that would be good. My understanding is that different countries, different rates, but certainly within the UK, if they can kind of keep it that sort of sub £20 mark, £19.99, then that will keep them interested as well. If they start getting to the £25-30 marks, people will start to drop off and say, you know what, I'll just watch this the day after on YouTube. So the other thing as well, which is interesting about this, in terms of positive move forward for boxing, is the people they got on board. So you got the likes of Mike Costello, Laura Woods, who's impressing me more and more every time I sort of see her. Yes, you've got Maya Jama, who, paraphrasing Mayweather, don't know shit about boxing, but she is an incredibly beautiful lady and seems incredibly well-mannered and nice with it as well. But let's be honest, she don't know shit about boxing. So, but having Mike Costello on there really fills the void in terms of any questions that can't be asked. So, Mike Costello, to me, is possibly one of the best announcers out there. He's done everything from every single one of Usain Bolt's 100-meter finals through to the biggest boxing matches. Was a former amateur boxer himself, former amateur boxing trainer himself. A real great history to the man. So having him on board instantly makes you want to buy DAZN, because you're getting him as part of the package. Who they start to get on board from here onwards in terms of the boxing fraternity will be interesting. There's a lot of very good commentators out there. I mean, I see that Chris Lloyd and Darren Barker are doing stuff with DAZN. There's a few others in there, whether they become permanent. And the likes of Barry Jones, that always talks sense, and he sees the fights very well. His predictions are always very good as well. So as we enter the new sort of DAZN chapter, should I say, be interesting to see who they're going to open up, who they're going to take on board to try and move this next level vision forward. And for me, that's probably the most exciting thing that's happening in boxing right now. I get emails every day from Promotional, or whatever they're called, boxer with a double X. You've got all the different outfits in, between Golden Boy, etc., that get all the emails every day. I don't think it's going to be long before it's going to be like one DAZN email, which will basically encapsulate everything. Everyone's going to be a part of it. It's going to be filtered through that in some way. Let's see. It's kind of like these sanctioning bodies. I prefer to see it condensed as much as possible and coming out of one channel as much as possible. But obviously, we know that will never happen. In the ideal world, it'd be nice though. So I think it's a positive thing with DAZN coming on board. Seem very professional, and I think it'd be good for the sport.
Yeah, I think broadcasting, I think that's a good point. You look at DAZN, if they buy BT Sport, I don't know what happens with Frank Warren's kind of output, how that affects him. But then you've got Boxer on Sky Sports. They're picking up a lot of good British talent. The front man for Boxer is a very different character to Eddie Hearn. He's not as much in love with the limelight as Eddie is, but it's something that I think he'll just have to adapt to, and it's a different. The main thing is that the fights are good. What do you think, Luca? What do you think about this coming year of 2022 and British boxing and boxing as a whole?
Yeah, no, if I can just pick up a little on BT Sport and DAZN. I mean, the question I had exactly was what you mentioned, Cal, about Frank Warren. Where does that leave Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, DAZN, BT Sport, Frank Warren? So clearly that's going to be interesting how that works out. And I just wanted to say, yeah, completely agree about Mike Costello. I think the other ex-pro that's really impressed, just from a broadcast, sorry, I digress, is Andy Lee. I think has really shone and impressed everyone, I think, with his knowledge. Obviously, Barry Jones as well. So I don't know. It's a difficult question, isn't it, Cal? There's so much money at stake, and the power brokers that be, it's all about money. And I mean, it seems DAZN at the moment are sort of just, buying everywhere and everything, and sort of wiping the floor really, and almost going to have a monopoly by, obviously if they buy BT Sport, I guess you've got Sky Sports still in the picture. So I don't know, as long as, as Paul mentioned, as long as we get the big fights and we get value for money, I don't think anybody cares, to be particularly honest. It's just a case of, I think Graham Houston mentioned on Twitter the other day, back in the day, that there were fights that were like free in America, and when he was based in the UK, he couldn't get to see them, and that was a big regret. So it really boils down to that at the end of the day. If there are big fights, we want to see them, but clearly, if the DAZN are going to up their rates, and then Sky as well, it can cost a hell of a lot, can't it? And then you're not even guaranteed. You've got PBC and you've got ESPN in America, ESPN Plus. There's so much going on that, it's a difficult one. It's always money talks at the end of the day.
It's a lot. Like people, I've made the point before. Right now, the current output of DAZN is not value for money for me as someone that has Sky Sports, has BT Sport, whatever. If it's not right now value for money, just because you look at something like Netflix or Amazon Prime, those are the same money, but you get far more for your money than what you're getting for DAZN. And then you look, if you're subscribing to DAZN this month, you're paying for nothing, basically. You're a subscriber, but there's no output this month from DAZN. So it's and the thing with DAZN right now, when I was reading the article about the purchase of BT Sport, is they are hemorrhaging money. Like they made I think it was like £5 billion loss last year or something ridiculous. Like they are hemorrhaging money. But Paul made a good point there that they're obviously being backed by big dogs. And Paul also made another very good point, which is about Premier League football. And having that association from BT Sport with Premier League football and attaching that to boxing output is really important. It's something that you don't hear Eddie Hearn talk about, but it was such an important thing for him to build his brand. And in terms of building matchroom fighters, if you put on the adverts during the football or on Sky Sports News, you can't. That's so much value in being attached to Premier League football, because it is our national sport. And everybody watches the Premier League, so to have that attachment via BT Sport and the contract they have with the Premier League is going to be really, really big for DAZN, and I can understand why they're doing it. It's definitely a smart move. Just thinking about some of the fighters now, Luca. I've mentioned this a few times on the pod, but you've not been on it for a while. We've lost a lot of world titles in Great Britain. You think about, Callum Smith lost his world title, Billy Joe Saunders lost his world title, Anthony Joshua's lost his world titles. I'm sure there's somebody else that I'm forgetting. There's Josh Warrington lost his world title. Kid Galahad lost his world title. Terry Harper lost their world title. Shannon Courtney. Like, we've hemorrhaged world titles in the last 12 months. How healthy do you think we are, Luca, as in Great Britain, in terms of our standing on the world stage, in terms of our world champions? How do you think we look right now?
I love that question. Can I just go back quickly? BT Sport.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah.
No, because I've just quickly. Obviously, don't forget their big USPs, the Champions League as well. Obviously, just linked to Premier League, but obviously Champions League that Sky doesn't have as well. So clearly, a lot of people will get BT Sport as well for the Champions League. So anyway, maybe that's an irrelevant point. No, I love your question. I mean, I've got my own personal thoughts on. I mean, obviously, you've got Lee Wood just now, and you gain some, you lose some. It's cyclical, isn't it? It goes in cycles. Clearly, it's a general thought, and I'm not picking out any particular names. It's more champions. I think the number of British world champions has always been inflated, just for a very simple reason. The big bucks are here. They've got the big promoters. European fighters are beginning, Sandor Martin, one or two. Mohamed Abadi actually is an OP fighter linked with Christian Kirky, who's the matchmaker for obviously for Eddie Hearn. Is fighting out in Mexico this weekend, I believe, for the IBF title. So obviously some of these European guys are beginning to get shot. So back really to the point that I'm trying to make is the fact that I think it's always, I've always felt that the number of British world champions isn't really a reflection on the talent that we have in Britain. I think a lot of it is the promoters and the backers that they have that gives them those opportunities to fight for world titles. And then obviously what happens, a lot of them come a cropper because they're not ready to fight for world titles. So that's my very own opinion. I've had it for many years. It's not just now. So normally you should do, you know, the stepping stones of British, European, and then you go on to world title. Nowadays, or for the last however many years, fighters just get these world title shots like they're candy, you know, in a shop, you know, easy to get world title fights. And then obviously sometimes, you know, you're going to lose type like Josh Warrington against, although it was unexpected. But again, you run that risk when you fought predominantly domestic fighters, maybe European, and then you suddenly go up and, you know, you get these hungry Mexicans coming along, or real, you know, hardened kind of fighters, you know, you're going to risk it. So again, it's the rankings that are inflated. And the reason for that is the promoters that obviously have the money and, you know, with all the other belts as well. And these guys get these shots when they're not really ready, or they don't really deserve it, to be honest. So that's kind of, it's more a broader point. I'm not having a go at British fighters. It's not their fault in particular, but, you know, you've asked me, you know, you said that a lot of them have lost titles, and yeah, in part that's going to happen. It's just a general sort of trend, but also that's part of the reason as well. So you've got to be a little bit careful before you give somebody a world title shot as well.
I think that's fair to say. Paul, I think it's only right that a world title fight shouldn't be easy, right? We shouldn't have gimme world titles. It should always be, you know, be a challenge for them. And I think in recent years we've seen a lot more unifications, haven't we? We've seen, you know, I remember between, I think it was Jermaine Taylor beating Bernard Hopkins to Terence Crawford becoming undisputed like welterweight champion. We didn't have an undisputed champion for a long time. And since then, we've had about 3 or 4. Do you think that's got a lot to do with it, Paul, that there's more unification now, that it's harder now to win a world title than perhaps it was 4 or 5 years ago when we in Great Britain had 13 world
around WBA and WBC have brought to town. There's probably more world titles to be won out there. So if anything, we should be having even more world champions. The other day, someone was saying to me about Chris Eubank Jr. becoming world champion again. I was like, well, he boasts the fact that he's a 2-time middleweight world champion. Well, there's actually, you know, it's the IBO. Come on, you know, and I mean that in the nicest way. The IBO world title, albeit, you know, Golovkin and Usyk and Joshua have all sort of held it, but it doesn't hold, for me, nowhere near as much weight as a British title. Certainly, probably if you look at rankings, all the IBO world champions, they're probably way below the leagues of any British champion in that same weight. So I think we've just gone through a bit of a patch of maybe a bit of bad matchmaking. Maybe some people took their foot off the gas with COVID. Maybe, I don't know, there's a lot of sort of maybes in there. I think 2022 is a year of redemption for a lot of British fighters. Glad to see Liam Williams and Chris Eubank Jr. Are going to lock horns, so that's interesting one itself. I'm a big fan of Liam Williams. He always brings the heat. Thought he gave a very good count of himself when he fought Andrade. And although it was almost over within the first round, a couple of rounds later, he started to rock Andrade as well. And that's going for a bona fide world title. And the only other time that Chris Eubank Jr. did that was when he fought against George Groves, and he was sort of well out of his depth there. So, be interesting to see how those two turn up. Liam Williams wasn't well, you know, sort of battling a bit of injury before, so hopefully he's okay now. And yeah, let's have to see what happens there. You know.
You were just speaking there, and I just saw that Daniel Dubois is ranked number 1 with the WBA.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, for which title? The regular, the interim, the full blown, the unled version. I'm losing count. I think we were saying a while back that if someone wants to win, like, you know, we even said about Joshua, if he wants to come back and, you know, pick up a trinket, the WBA with God knows, it was at Manuel Charlo or whoever was holding it at one point. And now he's talking about fighting Trevor Bryant, Daniel Dubois. It's a good fight for him. Bryant was good about 100 years ago when he fought the likes of Klitschko and whoever else, but it's more a name he's fighting here than an actual boxer. So Yeah, we have to see. I mean, if he's ranked number one by the WBA, where does that put Joe Joyce at the moment? You know, -1. You know, it's I don't know. It's let's put it this way. I think there's a lot of developing talent in the heavyweight division at the moment. You look at Johnny Fisher being trained by Mark Tibbs. You know, he's a real banger. He's selling big tickets, which is why Eddie Hearn likes him. And then you've got the likes of Big Fraser. And Fraser Clark, everyone loves him. What a lovely man. He's going to have to step on the pedal quickly because he hasn't got age on his side. Again, big 6'6" fighter. I'm sure he's going to knock out a lot of people early on. Maybe someone like Fraser Clark against Daniel Dubois. That might be a nice one.
Yeah, I think you're right. Clark's got to step on it. You know, he can't mess about really with puddings and guys coming into the ring in polo shirts. Like he's gonna. He's got to get on with it, and I thought he was going to knock me out the day I met him, but I don't want to talk about that again. It wasn't. It was not a good day. It was mortifying. Yeah. So yeah, a lot kind of to unpack there. I actually kind of think Daniel Dubois should just take the short money because he's going to get ripped off by Don King. Let's have it right. Don King's he's not going to get paid, but he'll go over to fucking I don't know the armpit of America and knock out Trevor Bryan in 2 rounds and get the regular belt, you know. And you could actually see if Usyk beats Joshua again, which I'd fancy him to do so, that the sanction bodies might start picking the bones off Usyk and going, "You're not big enough draw for us. We're going to take our belt off of you." You know, we've seen that a lot of times, really. So yeah, a kind of a lot to think about there. Who do you think, Luca? Who do you think the next British fighter to win a world title is? I'm not going to let you pick Josh Warrington because it looks like he's going to get a fight with Kid Galahad. Not Kid Galahad, fucking Kiko Martinez in February. So you're not picking him. And neither are you, Paul. Who is the next British fighter to win a world championship in 2022?
Can I pass on that one?
Paul, go to you, Paul.
I'll bat it back to Paul.
To win a world title, as in currently not a world champion, or
not a world champion, someone, the next British fighter to be crowned a world champion, whether they've won a title before or not. Just not Josh Warrington, because it looks like he's going to fight in February.
It's a tough one. It's almost sort of like you can morph in the last question, which is why we're losing so many world champions. I think we're a cut below at the moment in terms of full-on world caliber fighters. Despite the fact we've got 6 fantastic light heavyweights, do I see any of them beating Beterbiev? No. Do I genuinely believe, my heart of heart, we have a 135-pound fighter that's going to beat the likes of Kambosos, Gervonta Davis, Lomachenko? No. I can go through each of those divisions and sort of say, not sure. If I had to say who's going to become next world champion, whether it be this year, I'm not sure. Might be a little bit too quick, but Lee McGregor could do it.
Good shout. Lee McGregor's a good shout. He's definitely getting close. Won the European title in a round. He's picking up regional belts. I think it might be the IBF. He's going the IBF route, I think. I think he's definitely won. Luca, I know you were struggling.
No, what about, I was going to say Buatsi, maybe Joe Cordina as well, potentially.
I don't see him doing it this
division.
Yeah, and I don't see it, to be honest, at the moment. Bivol and Beterbiev, I don't see anyone stopping them at the moment. When Spider, because I know that Luca, you've interviewed Spider before, and you had a good relationship with him there. An incredibly lovely guy, and to have come in sort of last minute replacement and fought Bivol, he did a fantastic job there to have lasted a distance. I think if he was to step in with Beterbiev, I think he might get stopped. Beterbiev had that life-threatening cut on his head last time, and still sort of won the fight. I don't see anyone in the UK right now winning it. Obviously, they'd like to fight Beterbiev or Bivol. Out of the crop we've got here, I'd throw any of them in there. Like I said, we've got 6 phenomenal fighters in there. And Yard, he's hungry to get back in as well. But I don't think we're going to win a 175 world title this year. It's I think on the lower weights we seem to have sort of the more aggressive talent. We have to remember as well that the likes of Josh Taylor, I think, is going to rule the 140 roost for a while. If coming back to, reversing the clocks here about an hour and talking about Terence Crawford, if there was a fight that I'd like to see Terence Crawford involved in that doesn't involve Errol Spence Jr., it would be against Josh Taylor, even if it was, dare I say, a catchweight.
Yeah.
Don't go too far, Paul. Don't go too far. Yeah.
No, they pisses me off, catchweights. I absolutely hate them. And, Mayweather and Canelo were like the kings of it, And, but I think, I think it's interesting. Like I said before, we've lost a lot of world champions, but if you look at the ones we do have, which are left at the moment, they're bloody good ones. Who are looking at the likes of Josh Taylor, who Ring Magazine Unified Champion. You're looking at the likes of Tyson Fury. That he doesn't hold all the belts, but if Usyk's looking to take him on and beat him, Usyk, he's not Superman. He can be stopped. I think the scare of his life he had was against Breedis, and I actually had Breedis winning that by a round. So there is a way to get around him. So yeah, at the moment, we need to regain more of those titles, but I don't think that the champions that have lost all the belts, everyone that we mentioned before who were world champions, I don't think all of those are going to regain it. I think it could have been to do with timing when they did actually win their titles, a majority of those champions. And the timing now, or to try and regain it off the people that have beaten them, I think could be a bit of a slippery slope.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate about Josh Taylor, Cal, because, you said that a lot of, we've lost a lot of titles, but Josh Taylor is worth 10, 15 of the titles that we've lost. I mean, Britain, for me, hasn't had a fighter like him in a hell of a long time, and he seriously is world level. To clean up the division, the way that he did it, beating the guys that he beat, absolutely phenomenal. And I think he's done it in, 17, 18 fights, which is another point I was going to make about world titles, the way that people, even Better Biev's had 16 odd fights. It's incredible that, once upon a time you'd have had to have at least a good 30 fights before you'd even get a chance at a world title. But anyway, that's another point. But Josh Taylor is, I think every country would want Josh Taylor as a world champion. Phenomenal. Yeah.
I think with Josh Taylor, I think he's the blueprint of how fighters should be matched going into the world level. Postol, Barancic, Regis Prograis, Ramirez, all in a row. Postol wasn't even for a world title. And we're looking at Conor Benn right now, and Conor Benn's talking about fighting a 39-year-old Robert Guerrero. Robert Guerrero's been finished.
It gets worse. Sergio Martinez is about to fight a guy in a few weeks' time, and around his 47th birthday. I mean, if he's looking for money, which I don't think he is, because he's got this massive promotional outfit. But if he's looking for a fight, why not have the rematch with Martin Murray? Martin Murray's now 38. He's got 39 years old, and try and close the book there in terms of who won it, because obviously Martin won it the first time but didn't get the decision. So why not get a couple of the old bulls to lock horns and let them have a good old scrap?
Yeah, I love Maravilla. He was one of my favourite fighters. He's a bit of me, cute southpaw, and I thought he was undervalued. I know, obviously, you wrote Martin Murray's book, Paul, and I understand you banging the drum for Martin, but Maravilla was my kind of guy. Cute southpaw, great feet. It was all about his feet. Once his feet went, he was done. He was completely finished. Once the knees went, that was it for him. But I loved Sergio Martinez because he was never a middleweight. He shouldn't have been a middleweight. There was no way he should be in a mid. I think he still fights at middleweight now, and that shows that all these years later that he never should have been in the middleweight division, because he can still make the weight now. But I loved him.
I think he was a fantastic fighter as well. I went for the real hard route. There was a documentary on him. I think it was on Netflix or Amazon a few years back, and it was talking about how he had to come over, leave Argentina, wasn't getting the opportunities, came to Spain, ended up by winning the IBO. There we say again, the IBO. I think it was against Richard Williams. Lovely man, Richard. And then from there, kind of springboarded into sort of bigger and better things. The fights he had with Paul Williams, incredible. That famous left hook where he absolutely iced him. And more than anything, the other reason I say he's a lovely guy is because when I got in touch with him to ask him to write a few words for the Martin Murray book, he gave me about 1,000 words back, and it was fantastic. It was really sort of candid, and he was a bit sort of tongue in cheek, sort of saying how we'd won the fight. But he was very, very respectful of Martin Murray. And that shows the sort of the true stripes of a world champion. He had nothing to prove by sort of saying, I won it, I didn't win it or whatever. I went in there. We were a couple of gladiators and we fought, and that's it. Sergio Martinez's record speaks for itself. So when a fighter of that caliber comes in the ring now at the age of 47, it's almost like there are two totally different fighters in there. We're not talking about like George Foreman, who came back and was just as destructive and as strong as when he was sort of the first time. And a fighter at 47 who's fighting around somewhere of the 130 to 150 range in pounds comes back, you just look at it as a different Sergio Martinez. There's different fighters coming in just to have a bit of fun in the ring and does not expect him to win world titles or anything else.
I've just got it in my... I'm sorry, but I've got this little gremlin and he lives in my brain and he tells me bad things. And so when you were saying, Sergio Martinez wrote a few words for Martin Murray's book, in the back of my head, I'm thinking he wrote, "I beat you again, puto." I'll beat you once, I'll beat you again, puto. But yeah, that's my cross to bear. No, I love a bit of Maravilla. My favourite moment of Sergio Martinez was when the Chavez Jr. fight, because Chavez Jr. was this guy that was the son of a legend, was boxing in Texas, and they weren't drug tested him when he was boxing in Texas. He beat Andy Lee, amazingly, that he beat Andy Lee, Chavez Jr. And it was all set up for Chavez Jr. to beat Martinez, and then Martinez outboxes him for 11 rounds, gets dropped in the 12th, gets up and goes, "Fucking come on then, let's have it." And then has it with him in the 12th round. And I remember standing up at 4 a.m, screaming at the TV, "Come on, Sergio, come on, Sergio." So, yeah, massive fan of Maravilla. Did you want to add something, Luke? I can see you there, notebook in hand.
No, well, I wanted to say something about Usyk, but it was more a question for you guys. Does it sit well with you that Usyk is the unified heavyweight champion? Because you know what, Tyson Fury, I know, yeah, that you went off on one a little bit yesterday, but something, Usyk, I think he was a middleweight in the amateurs at one point, and to me, I don't know. It doesn't quite add up. And I know he's a great fighter. He's won the titles fair and square, but to me, he's not really a heavyweight at the end of the day. And I know it's a bit controversial, but I don't know. It just doesn't sit that well with me that he's the unified heavyweight champ. There you go. I've said it. I know I'm probably...
No, I like it. I'm
probably going to get slaughtered for it, but
I like it.
Nothing against Usyk, please. Nothing against his talent, his skill set. As a guy, phenomenal guy. What a great character, great for the sport. But Usyk, heavyweight champion, just doesn't do it for me somehow.
Title of the podcast, Paul, juiced to the gills. Come on, answer that. I've got something to say about that, but you go first, Paul. Go on.
About Usyk? Yeah, I actually like the guy. I think the way you dismantled Joshua... just clearing my throat there. Someone did predict that Usyk was going to beat Joshua on points. Oh, it was me, was it? Sorry, yeah. So it wasn't a massive surprise, and I think he'll do the same again. But I think the only way he's really going to get his respect at heavyweight level, because Luka's right to an extent there. He's only had 3 fights at heavyweight: Chaz Witherspoon, Derek Chisora. The big kudos goes with the Anthony Joshua win, but that was almost like a conquer contest. It's like, yours is a 15er and mine's a 75er, and then, I beat yours, so I'm somewhere near 100er at the moment. So he beats Joshua, and he's picked up 4 straps, and probably a couple of other trinkets in the background. If he fights Fury, assuming here he beats Joshua again, but if he fights Fury and he does number on him, then you kind of got to sort of say that he's the man. Or if, for example, Joshua somehow does beat Usyk, and then Usyk goes on and say does a number on Joe Parker, Joe Joyce, some other big heavies out there who we give him respect to at the moment, then again you've got to say, okay, he's up there, he's mixing with them, and that's it. Or if he goes in against someone like Deontay Wilder, sort of massive power. What sort of state he's in at the moment, who knows? But if he beats him, then again, he's kind of aiming at the top 5 crop. And if he's able to do the lot of them, then great. But for the moment, listen, he hasn't lost against anybody. He just beat Anthony Joshua a few months ago. If he's able to repeat that, phenomenal. He's definitely down in the record books at an amateur and at a professional level. I think he's a very, very good fighter to look at from a pure boxing perspective. If you look at the psychology he uses as a fighter, if you look at the way within first 30 to to 45 seconds when he got in the ring against Joshua, he was already breaking him down mentally. Land that first power punch. Look at him in the eyes, give him the nod as if to say there's a lot more to come here and I got a lot more in the tank. And you see Joshua slowly starts to crumble. And the other day, Joshua made a comment which was a little bit weak for me when he said he won 9 out of the, whatever it was, 12 rounds, and I won 3. So this time all I've got to do is win 7. And I went, well, you're thinking, well, that ain't a champion's mentality. You should be either thinking, I'm going to knock him the fuck out, or I'm going to win 9 this time, or even 10. It ain't going to be no sort of, in the hands of the judges. Usyk went in there thinking, I'm going to try and knock you out. And to be honest, with a different referee, in the last minute and a half there, when he had him up against the ropes, he could have easily been stopped. There was certainly grounds there to say that Usyk could have won that on a TKO. So, what's going to be the big shock of 2022 is going to be when Usyk beats Fury. You heard it first right here.
Fuck me, that is big.
I know.
Xanon's getting his dick out. Xanon's flopped it out.
Here, mate. Proper keyboard warrior here, hiding behind the screen.
I like it. Xanon's flopped it out. He's swinging it around. He's made big dog predictions for the new year. I would say, because I know what you're getting at, Luca. For me, this isn't a Manny Pacquiao knocking out like middleweights. This isn't a Manny Pacquiao stopping people 10, 15 pounds bigger than him. Him beating Anthony Joshua got it wrong, but Usyk was just a better boxer. And this isn't some little guy. This is a 6'3", 6'4" man that's turned into a lump. He's not become a massive power puncher, but you never know in the sport. And sometimes I just think they're all at it. And I have to say, for Tyson Fury to label drug cheat at anyone is rich. Is very rich, considering him and his cousin both took a ban for nandrolone. They both took a 2-year ban. He's a convicted drug cheat. People don't like talking about it because he's British. But Tyson Fury, it's a fact. He is a convicted drug cheat. And Paul earlier on was talking about his big prediction about Usyk last year. The other big prediction that Paul didn't mention was Billy Joe Saunders and him quitting on his stall, which made my year. It did make my year. But yeah, I take your point, Luca. It does look funny. But
no. Look, I mean, but then again, Rocky Marciano again was a blown up, whatever, 13 stones, whatever, 14 stones barely. So, and again, he was, one of the all-time heavyweight greats. So, you've got that counter argument as well. I do get it. Maybe the fact of the 3 fights, and maybe, but it's not his fault. You can only beat who's put in front of you, and fair play to him. But maybe, Joshua potentially is, let's be fair, Joshua as well, let's just say a bit of a manufactured heavyweight in some ways, and probably not with the greatest skill set. And again, but he found himself in his position. So that's the world that we're in, fair enough. Well, I can't argue with it, at the end of the day, but we'll see. Someone's got to beat Usyk, and it's going to be hard to dislodge him because he is a very skilled operator for sure.
I think Fury beats him. I think Fury's too big. I think he's too awkward. If he wants to go southpaw, he'll go southpaw. If he wants to rough him up on the inside, he'll rough him up on the inside. I think Fury's just got too much. He's just got too many ways of winning. And I think Fury, despite what I just said about him being a convicted drug cheat, I think he gives any heavyweight in history a fight, because even though he'll get hurt, he'll always get back up. And the main thing is he's 6'9" and 19 stone, and he can move like a middleweight. So he'll give anyone a fight in history. I think. I think someone like Lennox Lewis would knock him spark out. But Fury's a top fighter. He's a top heavyweight. He's a convicted drug cheat. But I think he'd beat Usyk. Come on then, Luca, give us your big dog prediction for 2022.
No, my prediction was actually going to be that Fury's going to come a cropper. That was going to be my, because I at some point, I don't know whether it'll be 2022, just simply because of his chin. And I think he's always vulnerable. I think he got like, against Deontay Wilder. I think the next time that happens, he ain't going to be getting up. He's been down before, and I think you're right. He's very skilled, very quick, height, everything, all the things that you want. But when you've got a bit of let's say a glass chin that like he has, you're always going to be vulnerable, and then there's going to be that punch that gets you, and you're not going to get up. So I think Tyson Fury's luck is going to run out at some point for sure. Because he does like to get in there. He does like to, and, he does sort of lose his concentration now and again, those lapses. And, I think he could well find himself, on the end of a first loss.
Do you know what?
At some point.
Mr. Zanon flopped it out and started swinging it around. And Luca just pulled out. Luca just unzipped it, pulled out a 12-incher and just slammed it on the table and just said, "Fucking have a go on that, son." Like, God, I thought I was going to say my big prediction was going to be that Dylan White retires, but that's nothing. That is nothing.
If he was to retire, but I don't think people even bat an eyelid at the moment because he's on, he's off, he's promoting, he's managing, he's fighting. It's a bit of a cauldron of smoke at the moment. I can't really see what's going on with him, So, but. With one good thing I would say is that between Fury, Joshua, Usyk, and a bundle of other heavyweights on the periphery at the moment, the heavyweight division's in healthy shape. It went through a bit of a shit period a few years back, but it's in good shape at the moment. It's good that we've got these sort of debates to be sort of talking about, especially coming out the arse end of the pandemic at the moment. I think things are going to start getting better. We're going to start travelling around a bit more. I mean, one fight we haven't mentioned, which is on home soil here, at the heart of the darts at the Alexandra Palace, is Danny Jacobs against John Ryder. And that's a good fight. It's a crossroads fight for the both of them. Ryder, teak tough. Jacobs, obviously sliding, since the fight he was when he fought against sort of Golovkin. But, I wonder what Danny Jacobs is going to make of the Ali Pali and the surrounding areas, So, but anyway, that's in February. So there's lots of stuff on the horizon that's tantalising at the moment. And Serrano, Taylor, is it finally going to happen? There's loads of little bits and pieces in it. I'm excited. I'm happy. 2022. There's a lot for us to be chatting about, even during a stagnant month where boxing's actually not happening in Britain. We've got loads to chat about, and thankfully your poddy keeps people energized about boxing, keeps them in a loop through us gassing as well, maybe gets them thinking about things. And we're very lucky we get some good questions from the guys who follow the poddy. So everyone listening out there, keep following Callum's poddy. It's the best one out there.
Yeah. Cal, I've just got just the other potential upset. You never know. Are we overlooking Jack Catterall against Josh Taylor? Because that's got all the makings of a very tricky fight. And Jack Catterall is kind of he's got that awkward style. Who knows? Again, are we overlooking him? And is Josh Taylor overlooking? You just never know these things. Of course, you'd expect Josh Taylor to walk all over him, but you just never know. Styles make fights, don't they?
That's it. Josh Taylor looks very confident of it, but you get the impression he's quite tight at 140. And is he looking towards a Crawford fight? Is he looking towards Welter? You don't know. I think Taylor will beat him just because I think Jack Catterall's been treading water for a couple of years. I think he's been in a mandatory place for quite a while, and I think he's just trod water. And I think this is a huge step up for him. I don't think he's actually had the fights to prepare for this, really, at all. I don't think he's got boxed anyone near world level, let alone an elite level fighter like Josh Taylor. I didn't get to say who my pick was to win a world title first next year. I love talking about the politics, and it's Zach Parker, because Zach Parker's WBO number one. There was some talk about an interim title fight. Canelo, I don't think Canelo boxes at 168 pounds again. I think if he goes to cruiser and weighs 185, 190, he's not going back to 168. I think he'll go to 175. I think he might weigh 180, 185 against Junior Makabu. But I don't see him going back to 168. There's talk about him fighting Charlo. I'd like to see it, but I think he'd get Charlo out of there. Yeah. So Zach Parker, I think he'll pick up a vacant title. I think he might win an interim title and he might get upgraded into a world title. But it's a little bit political and it's not completely there. But I just can see it. It just feels like the chips are going to kind of line up there for Zach Parker to win a world title. I don't know how long we've been going for. We're going for a little while. We're not going to get to talk about everything. Actually, no. Let's do two more things. We said who's the next fighter to win a world title. Which one of our world champions would you pick to lose their world title? I'm gonna remind you of our world champions. We've got Sonny Edwards, Tyson Fury, Lawrence Okoli, Josh Taylor, Katie Taylor, Savannah Marshall. Have I missed anyone? Not sure if I have. Which one of them would you think? You might not think any of them were going to lose their world title, but if you had to pick one, who would you say might lose their world title?
So I think we were discussing last time as well. I'm a massive fan of Katie Taylor, but she takes a hell of a lot of punches, and just seems to be a slight slowdown of her speed. Her certainly output of punches in the last sort of couple of fights, albeit she won. And Serrano doesn't seem to be that way at all. She seems to be still peppering and great timing. Be interesting to see what happens when those two meet. And if I had to pick one, it might be Katie Taylor. I'm talking about the biggest of the names of the champions in there. I'd say that she could be the one. One of the people we didn't sort of say before was, and you said not sort of say it, was Josh Warrington beating Kiko Martinez to become IBF world champion again. There's a distinct possibility that could happen, depending on what sort of shape he turns up at, and depending whether or not Martinez is still in that sort of barbarian sort of mode of throwing those sort of clubbing punches and manage to connect with it. Josh Warrington, I don't think is going to get caught again like he got trapped last time. But in terms of who might lose it, I don't see Savannah Marshall losing her title. She's on the climb at the moment. She's a force at her weight. She's going to be really tough to try and get out of there. Fury.
Luca thinks Fury's going to lose it. He thinks Fury's going to quit.
I've got to stick, with my gut there and say that I think Fury's going to lose his world title this year. Like either the way Luca said, at some point he will lose the crown. Whereas I've said that Usyk is going to do the business in there. I'd like Fury to hang around as long as possible, though, because I think he's very, very good for the sport, and he's done a hell of a lot. He's been very motivational just in terms of how someone that fat was able to get back into cracking shape, just to show you can do it. When you see the likes of a Joshua or a Klitschko there, sort of 1% body fat, and they're constantly out their whole life. It's an incredible achievement, but I think it's more of an achievement to come back when you're like 10 stone overweight and then come back in at sort of world level and win the title. So, but it's put distinct possibility in my little world that he could lose it as well. But if I had to pick the crop, I'm going to put my 12-incher on the line again, and I'll say it could be Katie Taylor.
You're such a modest guy, aren't you, Paul? I was actually going to say Katie Taylor as well, actually. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Luca. Who would you
say? No, I would agree. No, honestly, I would agree, because I think Katie Taylor's dominated for so long, and again, she's getting on a bit as well, and you're always gonna, the risks are always higher, aren't they? And I think at some point as well, she's bound to lose. So I would say there's a fairly strong chance, because we can't all be at the very highest level all the time. Age does unfortunately creep up on us mother time, and I think Katie Taylor as well. But she's obviously a very tough, trained so hard, so dedicated. So it will take some performance. But she got a bit lucky, didn't she, against the Belgian girl Delphine Persoon a while back, didn't she? So twice, exactly. So again, luck can run out at some stage, can't it? So
Tasha Jonas even gave her a good fight, and I think, if I'm honest, I don't think Tasha Jonas is in a league. I think prime for prime, I don't think Tasha Jonas is in Katie Taylor's league, but she pushed her close. She gave her a tough fight. I'd love to see Tasha Jonas win a world title next year. Actually, talking about British fighters, I think some of the women that it's not the highest quality of the women's sport right now, but as I've said before on the podcast, I think the next generation is actually really going to benefit from this generation of fighters, the Katie Taylors and Tasha Jonas and Serrano and Breakhouse. I think the next generation are really going to benefit, and we're going to see the quality of women's boxing really go up. But I think some of the women that have won world titles aren't as good as Tasha Jonas, and I'd love to see Tasha Jonas win a world title this year. I think that's the polite way of putting it. I think we'll leave it there. Go on.
Just to finish off on the women's boxing, as a final note. So on the undercard, I mean, it's funny to say on the undercard, in Cardiff in February when Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Smith fight, on the undercard is actually Clarissa Shields, and she's trying against Emma Kozin for 4 versions of the female middleweight title. Clarissa Shields comes UK, and it's almost sort of going under the radar. It's probably the best women's boxer on the planet by a bit of a distance at the moment. So a fight I would like to see, it's maybe not as hyped as Errol Spence against Bud Crawford, but to see Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields having that rematch to an extent would be, I think, a fight to watch. Definitely, I think that Savannah Marshall, certainly for someone who's struggled in the past with the big crowds and whatever, she seems to really got a lot of confidence, and that's because of working with the Furies, etc. But recent outings, she's been blasting people out. 9 knockouts in 11 fights, and listen, Dave, they're fighting at middleweight at the moment. I think that's the reason why she's come over, is to basically set up that fight with Savannah Marshall. In fact, I think Savannah and Clarissa Shields are both 11-0. So whoever they fight next is puts them one step closer to each other.
Yeah, it'd be really good to see them two meet. I'd fancy Marshall, actually. I think Marshall might beat her. I think, Clarissa Shields losing that MMA fight is it's gonna knock her confidence a little bit, and splitting your time like that between MMA and boxing. She's clearly an excellent talent, Shields, but I think Marshall might do her, And Marshall, she has had a tough time. She was with Hennessy, she went to Mayweather, they never knew what to do with someone like Marshall, really. They're used to big characters, Tank, Floyd. They didn't know what to do with her, but now she's with the Fury, she's on Sky. Yeah, I'd like to see her get a world title. Final thoughts, Luca? We'll leave it with you before we wrap up.
Well, no, thanks
no
again
pressure.
for having me, Cal. And like Paul said, incredible 130, however many episodes. I love it, listening to it. And, it's just great for boxing fans. I think, it's an incredible poddy. So congratulations. No, my last thought is just the word bridge away. Again, things annoy me. I don't know where they got that. Was it from the character in the Italian Job, Mr. Bridger?
No, there was a little kid who got attacked, and his surname was Bridger. He got attacked by a dog, and he was actually jumped in front of his little sister to save her from getting absolutely mauled, and he ended up this pit bull, whatever it was, jumped on him and tore his face up, and he was in a pretty bad way. So Maurizio Suleiman then decided to name this in-between weight as Bridger weight, which later inflated cruiser or super cruiser, whatever you want to sort of call it, and that's it. So it's not. I think it's just a bit of a mockery. I think the little lad deserves, all the plaudits and a massive pat on the back, and everything good that comes through the act that he did, which was absolutely incredible and heroic. But I think sort of pulling it into the boxing scene where you've got different titles with history, etc., and then you come up with this Bridger weight, it just, Yeah,
didn't know that.
No. I guess you're not a fan of Bridger weight then, Luca.
Well,
super cruiser, junior heavy, whatever.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff, isn't there? The American way, and junior middle, and then super welter. We like light middle here in the UK, don't we? We don't really. We don't really refer. Well, we prefer light middle to super welter, don't we? Or junior middle, God forbid, which is even worse. So but like Paul said, Suleiman, I don't know how it happened that he even had the authority to invent a category like that. It sounds a little bit ridiculous, really. And as Paul said, it shouldn't really have a place. Great story, and of course all the rest of it, but shouldn't really have a place in boxing, really. I mean, that's my thoughts, but I don't know too much about it, to be honest. But
I think it's I think the proof of it is in the lack of fighters that are interested in it. And I think that kind of says it all, really. I think you're looking at it, you think, well, they got 200-pounders, they go from 200-pounders and they're fighting 250-pounders, right? So from the outside, you might think, well, yeah, maybe let's have a middle division. But the fighters, the lack of top fighters that have wanted to go near it says it all, really. I think it says everything at all. Oscar Rivas has won their title. There's no one really on the horizon for him. He'll be back at heavy at some point. So I just think I think that says it all, really. Paul, one more thing before we go. Rank in order from least worst to worst sanctioning body.
Oh God, from least worst. So from best down to shit.
Yeah. They're all shit. But
it's funny, isn't it? Because 10 years ago, you'd have automatically said WBC. Then I'd have said close beyond would have been the IBF. They've all diluted and insulted their own integrity so much. It's hard to say which one's actually got the most kudos at the moment. I don't put the WBC up there as much as I used to anymore, due to the fact you've got all these franchise titles and all this shit. And every time there's the Canelo fights, he gets another belt invented for it. So that's not worse. That's not the first one. Sorry. IBF at the moment. One of the things that made me not like them as much is when they got the IBF European title. I thought, what a load of shit that is, and not to mention all the intercontinentals and the incontinent belts and whatever else they've got, So I think my straight answer would be this. I have so little confidence in all of the sanctioning bodies and all the shit and all the interims and all the fringe titles they have that build up to the crescendo of being called world champion. I'm going to put all 5 of them in last place.
I'm going to put IBO as number 1 because I think IBO is the best.
You got the WBF up there as well.
Do you know what the belt? I used to like the WBF because it was blue, like the European titles. Actually, when Audley won it, I was like, oh, that's actually quite nice, that belt. It doesn't mean anything, but go on, Audley, son. WBF, make it hot like Eubank did. Eubank made the IBO title fashionable. Do you want to have a stab at it?
WBU as well. Well, not really. I mean, yeah, Paul's kind of summed up WBU. I remember IBF, it was Bob Lee, wasn't it? Back in the day, he was head of the IBF. And I think Larry Holmes did a lot for the IBF title, correct me if I'm wrong. So we grew up with those kind of titles, didn't we? WBA, WBC, IBF. So those were the 3 big sanctioning bodies. And then it just all went to pot kind of thing. Well, WBO, WBU, Shane Neary, I think it was WBU, and then IBO and all the rest of it. So yeah, all that type of stuff. Yeah, not really much to say, really. It's
IBO for life. IBO for life. We'll leave it at that.
We'll go with the IBO.
We'll go with the IBO. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, chaps. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Cal.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Nice one, chaps. Take care. Bye-bye.